Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch for Come Get Counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 127, and we are finally getting around to a character that has been on our master list since over 3 years ago when Doc and I first came up with the list of all of the characters, like the really blatantly obvious characters that definitely had a whole host of psychological issues and ones that we could absolutely go in depth on. And again, it goes to show how awesome the show is and how many characters and the width and breadth of characters that we've done, that it has taken us 127 episodes to get to Dr. Victor Von Doom.
Yeah, he was one of the characters that you just immediately think of when you think of the premise of this show. So no, that was not an intentional teaser to keep him this long, but I'm so excited for this.
This is going to be a hell of an episode. So thank you, Matt, for the suggestion. And Matt, as always, has written a soliloquy explaining his selection, and we'll get to that momentarily. I'm really going to blow through the background as much as I can, as expedited as I can, and I know I'm still going to miss 90% of it, but Dr. Doom, created by the legends Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in Fantastic Four number 5, July 1962. Victor Von Doom was born to Romani parents. His mother was killed by Mephisto when he was young, and he grew up studying mysticism and technology in an effort to bring her back. He eventually went to Empire State University, where he encountered Reed Richards. While building a machine to communicate with the dead, specifically to talk to his mother, Reed corrected his math, but Victor's ego refused to let him make the necessary corrections, and the machine exploded, scarring him permanently. Side note, we find out years later, like decades later, in real time, of course, that Ben Grimm actually messed with the machine because he was so annoyed at Victor's ego, and Ben, being Reed's close friend, didn't care for the back and forth that Victor and Reed were going through. So Ben basically sabotaged the machine in an effort to say, haha, I'll show you, and carried the guilt with him for decades. So he fled, and he eventually encountered some monks and decided to create a suit of armor, including a mask to cover the scar. Unfortunately, he put it on his face before it had sufficiently cooled, which burned him further and then fused itself to his skin. He spent the next several years seeking vengeance on the Fantastic Four in various ways, but he always ended up defeated by Reed's genius and or the combined effort of the team. He began battling other Marvel heroes, and during the original Secret Wars event managed to obtain the power of the Beyonder, although he wasn't able to maintain it. He does assist the Fantastic Four when Sue is pregnant with her second child, because Johnny Storm goes to him for help, knowing that he won't pass up the chance to one-up Reed and succeed where Richards failed. And his help does succeed, and all he asks is that the child be named Valeria, after a former love of his. And he and Valeria end up having a very touching and interesting relationship. She calls him Uncle Victor, and he really does sincerely dote on the child. He also occasionally works alongside Namor the Submariner, including as part of the Cabal. They have an odd collaboration / friendship. I'm not trying to sound like Mortal Kombat. Friendship. But that's kind of what it is. You're like, friendship? Really? Those two? But they do have a surprising amount in common. And Namor's another character that we have not yet done on this show. We could do an hour and a half on Namor. So after another battle with Reed, he begins losing his mental capacity, and Valeria helps restore his mind in exchange for his assistance. And he actually joins the Future Foundation to help defeat the Council of Reeds, which is a group of Reed Richards from alternate universes that all share Reed's genius, but not his empathy and conscience. So during the second Secret Wars event, he usurps the power of the Beyonder again and becomes God Emperor Doom. His ability, coupled with that of the Molecule Man, who we did an episode on, creates a brand new universe where the members of the Fantastic Four are serving him in various ways. Sue is his wife. Franklin and Valeria are his kids. Johnny is the son. Ben is the wall surrounding the Capitol. And so Reed and a collection of surviving heroes defeat Doom and, using the restorative power of the Beyonder, heal Doom's face. Rather than using the power for destructive purposes, Reed says, we're going to do something good with this, and I'm going to heal Doom's face. So he ends up in this situation where he's trying to repent for all of the bad things that he's done. And so after Tony Stark's defeat in Civil War II, Doom actually takes over as the new Iron Man. And he serves heroically for a time until he ends up attacked by the Hood, where he gets burned yet again. This is to say nothing, by the way, of his pseudo-son Kristoff and his control over Latveria, where he does serve as the head of state and essentially utilizes that fact and the diplomatic immunity therein to prevent any major retaliation upon him, because he basically goes to the United Nations and all the governments of the world and says any attack on any Latverian period will be met with a swift and thorough response from me personally. So Latveria is essentially left alone because nobody wants to incur the wrath of Doom. You would think then that a egomaniacal despot like Doom would rule over his country with an authoritarian hand, and you would end up with a situation not unlike North Korea, but yet Latverians are very, very well off. Doom sincerely and honestly cares for all of his people and has provided them with all the comforts of home. No Latverian wants for anything ever. And so it's this whole notion, and we're going to get into that in the issues as well as when I read Matt's description in a second, but it's this idea that Doom uses Latveria as his example to the world of what everything could be like if only you would serve under me. So Matt, as I said, as always, writes a wonderful description and this beautiful write-up. And so I always like to read them because A, he does a better job of explaining things than we ever could, and B, just because he's just that damn good with words. The two traits that have defined his character for 60 years, the narcissistic personality disorder to end all narcissistic personality disorders, and the mother fixation to end all mother fixations, both just amped up to 11 and beyond. But he certainly makes it work, doesn't he? You honestly can't tell me if you drop the comic book version of Doom into the real world, not only would he not be out of place among the pack of sideshow clowns who have been running the world since the fall of communism, not touching anything over the last several, especially the last presidential administration, but he'd be among the most revered leaders in the world for his effectiveness in providing for his citizens. That certainly wasn't the case. And I wonder if it's the rare instance of a narcissistic personality disorder being used for good. Latverians canonically have a first world standard of living, universal education, free healthcare, little to no pollution, no crime to speak of, and an economy that's as thriving as a country subject to constant embargoes from the United States can be. Moreover, every single one of his citizens matters to him, the same as if they were extensions of himself, which, let's face it, is probably how he views them. If you're a farmer with a crop blight problem, Doom will personally come to your farm, figure out what's causing it, eradicate it, and supply you with a new proprietary, super effective soil nutrient solution he devised in the shower that morning. If you leave the country, there's literally nowhere you can't go to and come back from safely. The Latvian passport is just a card that says, admit this person into your country or suffer the wrath of Doom. It's never once been questioned. If you harm even a single hair on a Latvian citizen's head, Doom will personally track you across the entire universe, through time, or across dimensions and force you to make restitution. Now, obviously, he does this because it's an affront to his unquenchable ego for everything in his country to not be the greatest in all creation. But, and this might be delving into the poli-sci angle a bit, in 2021, would anyone really care why he did it? His country is fed, clothed, housed, educated, productive, and healthy. Yes, he wants to conquer the world and really everything beyond it, but we'll start with the world. But it's because he genuinely believes that humanity is being deprived of the benefits they would have under his magnanimous rule, and I'm sure it legitimately breaks his heart. As a psychologist, how would you even start getting through to him? What kind of circumstances would you need? He's got to be one of the toughest nuts to crack in any comic book universe. And Matt is absolutely right. At one point, and again, this is going into the comics, he encountered the Panther God, Black Panther's god, and he laid his soul bare, and the Panther god revealed that he legitimately wants humanity to thrive in a utopia. That utopia just happens to be one in which all serve doom. And he said numerous times, I have traveled through time. I have seen how all future universes end. He's basically Doctor Strange from Infinity War. And he's like, the only one in which we survive is the one where I'm in charge of everything. As long as you all serve me, we're good and everything will be fine. So it's the issues then. The first one is ego. And you know, I'm gonna branch this because we have in the show notes, I had ego and vanity as two. They're really kind of very similar.
They're matched.
They're essentially matched. It's the ego about his brilliance and the vanity about his appearance. This man's got an ego the size of the planet that he wants to rule over.
Yeah. All right. Let's jump into this. This is one of the rare times that a character, while you can understand the unfortunate circumstances of what they've gone through that may have been negative, you know that he had this for so long, even before all the negatives, that I'm sure if you encounter someone like this in your life, you wonder, like, how do you fit in the room, man? Your head must be just gigantic. There's something to be said about confidence and self-esteem when you're going through development as a child and an adolescent and all those things. And I'm sure we've all encountered, and if you're one of these people, that's okay too, but we've all had experiences with people that, as I just said, you wonder how anyone can even stand to be in the same vicinity because everything has to be about them. And yet, as I've hinted at with other people, there is so much about them that they are willing to fill the space. So it's that classic trope. Well, enough about me. What do you think about me? And they're able to guide whatever circumstance is going on to come back to them so seamlessly that even when you can't stand it, it just means you're being folded into the scenario. You're now one of the antagonists that can't stand that person. And so all of the oxygen is being taken up talking about how you can't stand that person. And even if the person is someone that you wish to get away from, all you do is now think of ways that you can avoid dealing with them, but they now have taken up all of your consciousness. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Even if they weren't someone that you think should have all that time and effort dedicated to them, for whatever reason, be it their actual talents or their perception of their own talents, they still manage to take up all that space. It is something that not many people can do on a consistent basis. And the few that do, I hate to say it, but the way at least many Western societies are set up, they get rewarded pretty handsomely if they've done it the right way. If we're talking media, that becomes very obvious. But if we're talking business, if they're not doing something that's criminal, or at least they don't get caught, or they find a way to have enough people that are willing to defend them in court, then they certainly can do well in that. If we're talking science, we already see what's going on. How many people get lined up, and thankfully it's not many, but once in a while, I will go through a medical journal, and the second that I see a certain name, I immediately throw it away. And I don't mean that as an insult to the journal. I mean it as an insult to the particular person that I know is pushing a certain agenda because they have to publish every 2 or 3 months with something that's just an reiteration of something they've already said that either has been debunked or kind of pushed to the wayside because we found other ways to do it. But because they've managed to get a public audience above and beyond the scientific community, they still end up as a huge name. I'm not going to blast anybody out here because that's not the point of this podcast. But those types of things, it's one of those rare scenarios where we're saying, as Matt so eloquently put it,
we're saying that this is a quote unquote negative thing, and yet it constantly is getting rewarded. Well, you, me, or anybody else, if you're telling me one thing, but you're giving me another, I'm going to respond to your actions way more than I'm going to respond to your superficial words. And yes, I'm using that sarcastically when I say superficial, because if my bank account's getting bigger, or I'm getting more press, or I'm getting more bookings, or whatever, and I still have my job and my business is growing and all that stuff, it doesn't really matter what you say about me. All that matters is that you're still putting all that effort into thinking about me. So,
Fallout Boy, I don't care what you think as long as it's about me.
yeah. And just to bring it back, Matt is listening, so he points out Thomas Jefferson had a lot of this. And I'm doing my best to resist the obvious Hamilton references there. But
what did I miss?
You got it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, and I know I've mentioned this with other characters. If it's not bragging if you can back it up, but above and beyond that, it's not just whether or not it's bragging and you can back it up. It's that you bragged about it, you back up some of it, you then exaggerate the amount that you backed it up, and then other people talk about whether or not you backed it up as much as you thought. So then you just have to bring it up again so that they continue to talk about it. So yeah, it's just this
It's
perpetual.
an Ouroboros.
I was going to say perpetual motion machine, but either way, yeah.
Yeah, it's an Ouroboros of ego that, well, as you said, sort of becomes self-sustaining, but then you have to keep sustaining it because it's the only thing keeping you alive.
Yeah, and also just to bring up, because I think I'd be remiss if I didn't tie in, as we already said, with the mask and the burns and all those other things. It became a feature, not a bug. So on one hand, we've had many characters that have had these types of incidents happen. And yes, it does definitely leave some mark on their psyche, but we can start to discern where they have delineated where that starts and stops. There is no starting and stopping with Doom with it. And the fact that he has taken what for many people would be considered a disfigurement, and it's now something that is more than ominous. It's omnipresent. It's just, that mask. When you see that, like, that's power. That's just an awe-inspiring presence. And to turn something like that around, while on one hand can be commendable, on the other hand, it does say a lot, where you're taking an accident and a really unfortunate situation. You're not making lemons out of lemonade. You created a lemonade factory and just like made sure that it's the biggest lemonade factory that's put all other lemonade factories out of business, and stole the lemons while you were, undercutting everyone else's prices. I'm purposely embellishing all of this because that's what Doom is. That's what he is. He's an embellishment of ego.
He definitely is. And Matt brings up a beautiful expression, a Mobius strip of ego. It begins nowhere and leads nowhere.
Beautiful.
Matt really has a way with words. He really, really does. So the next issue then, and Matt did allude to this a little bit in the description, Mama's Boy writ large. So much of Doom's raison d'etre is, at least in the beginning, is not just the rivalry with Reed Richards, and we'll get to that because that's clearly issue number 3, but this desire to bring his mother back. His mother died when he was very young, and he worshipped her. And so much of his study of mysticism and technology and everything that he wants to learn is to bring his mother back, to be able to talk to her one more time, to be able to just have one more moment with his mother. That is powerful. And, both my parents are still alive, but I can't imagine that grief of losing your parent at a young age ever really leaves you.
Yeah. And as always with this show, we are very real and down to earth with ourselves, and I'm going to do that with myself. So I'm not delusional. I know my mother is alive, but in a certain way, and anyone that knows me personally knows what I'm talking about here. My mother, well,
much of my mother is gone. And I am definitely a mama's boy. So I'm what I'm about to say about Doom is something that I also acknowledge. Ego aside, regardless of if you're a narcissist or if you're antisocial, or if you actually are highly introverted and don't want attention, or you're the life of the party, or whatever. I'm not even talking about anything specific. If you are falling into this category, there's nothing wrong with it. You just have to acknowledge it. There is a certain bond that happens with a mother and a child for obvious reasons. It's a survival point. You don't exist without them. And in theory, for a certain period of your lifetime, and we don't have to get into how long that can be, they can provide you nourishment as long as they're healthy. So you can be, you can have everything taken care of by that one person in existence for quite a long period of time when you're developing. So from that standpoint, that bond can be incredibly powerful. But also there is, and not to be gender specific, but I'll admit I have a selfish reason to say this as a male, where there can also be an idea of reciprocating that feeling, that emotion. As you get older, a lot of children have this with either one of their parents, where they've done so much for you, you want to do the same for them. And in this case, Doom never even got that chance. So Victor, not just having that love of his mother, but also the idea, especially let's go back to that ego, the idea that he could do so much for so many people, and yet he didn't get the chance to really do that for her. And then through all of his study, the idea that you get a do-over, who wouldn't take that? That's not just a Victor thing. I mean, that's something like, really, if someone could walk up to you and said, let's be honest, without major repercussions to anyone else, you could have that person back in your life. That is an amazing idea. It's a fantasy. It really is, but it's a tempting one. And this is where comics really can bring forth some level of visceral response that you can't say otherwise. I know I feel this way, and I'm sure other people do. I would give anything to have certain conversations and moments with my mother back. And the idea that I could put and dedicate my life to doing something like that, I can't blame him on that. But there's another side to this, regardless of the fantasy of that also can come into play. And that is, I mentioned the protective factor, that can go a negative way too. And this comes up generically again. This can come up in the schoolyard. Don't you talk about my mama. Don't you dare talk about my mom. And a level of anger and being easily frustrated by people that are attacking family. It doesn't just have to be a mother, but just having a highly reactive emotional formation to external insults or just even questioning, can lead to people putting themselves in situations that maybe they shouldn't. And a lot of times it means that you become irrational when it comes to certain circumstances. I'm going to give a very baseline example of this. Let's say, for no reason or no fault of anyone else, a parent is caught, let's say, stealing or caught cheating on something, whatever, a negative situation. Some people will just blindly do whatever they can to either cover it up or fight it as best they can or do whatever they can because it's this person that's so important to them. Facts be damned. There is a certain ground where you recognize you're not going to fit with the rest of society on how they're going to view this. And while it's commendable that you want to feel that way about family and you want to do something like that, recognize that you're also putting yourself in harm's way if you're willing to go away from society's norms to that extreme a level. And think about how Doom was handling all of this when you add in how he presents himself in the first place. And that's how you get such a tight and well-crafted origin for a character like this. This is one of those rare times where even with rewrites, even with other factors that come into play here and there, this character is so well crafted that you just
within the first few issues of whatever you picked up with him, you knew what you were dealing with Victor. And yeah, the mama's boy thing is a big part of that. And we'll get to, because we already did the ego, we'll get to the other big one in just a little bit.
Yeah, and Matt points out, particularly since he knew his mother's soul was canonically in Mephisto's hell, that has to add a whole bunch of layers to it. That is the other part of it, certainly, that it's not just that his mother is dead, it's that his mother was killed by Mephisto and is rotting, his mother is in hell. So it's not just that I want to talk to her again, it's I need to rescue her.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, well, ironically, I didn't know Matt's comment was there, but that that actually does play directly into what I was just saying. Like, not that his mother had done anything specifically wrong, but I'm just saying, when you think of the idea of hell being a punishment and, all of that, it's like, okay, but if someone's in a bad situation because they've done a bad thing, you want to help them, but how do you help them? If you're a mama's boy, you have this temptation of not just, wanting to help in a way that's considered ethical and valuable, it's also potentially highly destructive to other people and illegal. So there's always that risk too. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the last one, and again, we could go on and on about Victor, but the last one is the rivalry with Richards. This never-ending, enduring hatred that he has for Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards, is funny and sad and so many emotions all tied in one, because this is such a major part of his life. This is, again, right up there with the, it's part of the ego. It is certainly connected to the ego, but in particular, it is distilled. It's not just that he can't let anybody beat him. He'll not that he takes any defeat laying down, but especially not Reed. It is personal. It is bitter. It is angry with Reed Richards. And to spend decades of your life, again, not just with the ego, but decades of your life loathing a particular individual and doing what you can to one-up them and fighting and doing whatever you can to show that I am better, I am smarter, I am stronger and more powerful than this hero. Why don't you love me like him?
Yeah, this is the type of thing that, oh boy, I know people are going to get annoyed with this, but I got to admit, I'm a sports fan. I am a boxing fan. The first thing that came to mind with this was Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, because Muhammad Ali was this larger-than-life human being, captivated people, was not always beloved, was clearly had many detractors, first with the change of his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, but then also the whole draft situation where he stripped of his championship. And you have Joe Frazier, working man, common man, but incredible infighter, just, hardworking, obviously highly skilled and talented, ends up winning a championship. So then you have the personality clashes. But there was a difference there, and this is where I'm going to equate it directly with this situation in the comics. Muhammad Ali viewed Joe Frazier as a fantastic foe and rival, and he wanted to win his matches. Joe Frazier wanted to destroy everything that Muhammad Ali stood for because he felt that he didn't treat him as a human being. There is a huge difference there. Even though you two are competing and you put together great encounters, there was a difference in terms of the intensity of how one man felt versus the other. Reed Richards, whenever he's doing something, is looking to solve a problem. And whether you are for him or against him, his main point is, okay, well, how are we going to get this done? As opposed to Victor, who is more like, whether or not there is a problem, I have to beat you. In other words, what are your priorities? Are your priorities the task at hand, or are your priorities the person? And Reed will always put the situation above the person, to the point that it's always been a joke once they started making this type of diagnosis. Was he on the spectrum in terms of autism, in terms of how he interacts with things? Because sometimes it seems like he completely divorces his emotions from his intellectual discussion of things. I mean, this is a man that once, left a whole species of aliens on a planet micro-sized because he says, well, there's nothing else there, so it doesn't matter. But at the same time, Victor, it's incredible how for someone we said has an ego, and in theory that means wouldn't have the same concern for other people, he's willing to make it a one-on-one with every single situation, every single encounter. In other words, if he had the actual time to do it, if he were talking to an audience of millions, then he would want to know, what do I have to say to each individual person to get them to understand what's happening? That's how intense he is with how he thinks about things when it comes to interaction. The fact that there's someone, though, that has similarities, and this is what really gets to him, similarities in intellect, similarities in terms of public attention. I'm not saying good or bad, just the magnitude. And you match that along with, in theory, when you think about them being at university and all of that. So now you're talking similar cohorts in so many different ways. And then, of all things, to bring it back to that Ali Frazier thing, you actually have to have direct personal interactions with this guy and make it productive in something that is important to you, and it went wrong with the most important thing in your life. This isn't a matter of whether or not you hold a grudge. This is a matter of if you ever put another grudge as high as this one. Because Victor will hold many grudges forever. That's not the question. The question is, how does he rank them? And if you are worthy of continuing to be in his purview, then may heaven or whatever deity, whatever thing you think exists, may it have mercy on your soul, because he does not let go. And to bring this back, because if I take the analogy, I'm going to actually give some of the information, and it's really unfortunate because there's been multiple documentaries on those two fighters, but at one point, and I don't know if it was still there, but Joe Frazier actually, if you called his cell phone, there was a poem, and I'm going to say this is float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Look at the way he is, and you'll see. Referring to Muhammad Ali's Parkinson. And so,
wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That's how bitter that was. And Ali, whenever he did interviews, pointed out it wasn't that way for him. So it isn't just a matter of whether or not people can have a beef. It's that it is so lopsided in terms of how one person feels versus the other, even when they acknowledge it's a rivalry. That's pain. That's not just the anger. That's saying that there's a part of your soul that hurts, even when it's quote unquote patched up, because actually they did start having conversations and they did talk later in life. But you could tell that's a wound that's never going to heal, And Victor, forget the scars, whether they're there or not. That's an indelible mark that his just entire profile will never allow him to forgive. I mean, that's the problem. It's not just whether or not he thinks he's right. It's just that he knows Rita's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, just things like that. I mean, I'm grateful that I've never been in something like that, because I just, that's not the way I live my life. But for those of you that, if you feel like you're in that scenario, just ask yourself why. And is it truly worth it to you? I'm not saying it's not worth it to have competition. I think competition is amazing. But even when we say rivalry, can we acknowledge that there's a level that goes above and beyond that actually does mental harm? Can we really just say that out loud, please? Please?
You get no argument from me. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we will get into treatment. So stay tuned. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? BetterHelp will assess your individual needs and match you with a licensed professional therapist. You can begin communicating within 48 hours.
It isn't a crisis line. It's not self-help. is professional counseling done securely online. BetterHelp has a network of over 15,000 counselors with a broad range of expertise. You can log in and message your counselor anytime and get timely and thoughtful responses. You can also schedule regular video or phone sessions, no waiting room required.
BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if you feel you don't have a good connection. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial help is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit betterhelp.com/capes, that's better HELP, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional.
Special offer for Capes on the Couch fans. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/capes.
Hi, I'm Tanner.
And I'm Lindsay.
And together we host a podcast called Not If I Reboot You First.
It's a show where we take our favorite properties and reboot them before Hollywood gets the chance to.
We also do adaptations and spin-offs and sequels, but everybody seems to call those reboots too.
It's everyone's favorite buzzword.
Sometimes we make something really good, like when we turned The Mummy into a proper pilot for the Dark Universe.
Sometimes things go bad and I drunkenly yell at J.K. Rowling for an hour.
And sometimes it gets really weird, and we time crash the entire Mighty Ducks franchise into a single universe.
So join us every week for something that's a little bit like brainstorming fanfiction.
Follow us on Twitter at NIIRYFPod. Those are the letters for the name of the show, and it's pronounced NIRF.
I turned Princess Belle into Iron Man once.
Wait, what?
This is Philip Kennedy Johnson, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And welcome back. So, in-universe treatment for Victor Von Doom.
This is actually incredibly simple. Incredibly simple. All I have to do is apply for citizenship to Latveria. I have to be one of his own. And I have to be the one person that wants to set up. And here's the point. I know how this works. I can't just set up my practice. I have to set up the ministry of psychiatry. And I have to make sure I make it as large and productive as possible. I need as many psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, social workers, licensed professional counselors, therapists, life coaches, art therapists, music therapists, recreational therapists, substance abuse counselors, everyone. I need to get as many as I can, and I need to make this budget as big as possible. And I need to screw it up. Why do I need to screw it up? Because that's the thing that Victor does. Victor can't stand the idea in his own country that something is going wrong. He has to fix it. But as anyone that works in mental health, you don't just snap your fingers and fix it. You really have to dig in. You have to be fully invested. And therefore, if I get someone with the size of his ego to actually become a part of an entire nation's organization for mental health and make sure that he can prove that someone that's trained in the field still can't do it as well as he can, then that plays right into what he would want and gives him the opportunity then, if he's doing it the right way, because once again, he has to become an excellent person in mental health, not just adequate, then maybe, just maybe, it would lead to some insight for himself, because that's something that a lot of people in mental health strive to do.
Ooh, I did not see it going that way.
I know.
Okay. So out of universe, egomaniacal. I'm not naming names. I'm just saying because there are clear differences.
I got it.
Egomaniacal head of state with parental issues, but who genuinely wants what's best for people if only they would just listen to him. See that last part that clearly delineates the difference between himself and any other potential person I'd legitimately be speaking about.
Yeah.
This is a tough one because I'm going to be very candid. This person never shows up in my office and probably doesn't show up in any office ever. Period. People like this do not seek that type of treatment. Their entire construct of the world does not allow for it. And I don't mean to say that patronizingly. I'm saying that as a direct observation. It doesn't even have to be on a national level, okay? It can be on the individual business level. It can be head of household of a family. When people get to that certain point and they know they're right, you're not going to seek out a person that's going to tell you you're wrong. The best you can hope for is that they allow for someone to point out their blind spots, meaning things that they still have yet to learn. Not that they're ignorant, but that they're still on their journey of expanding that profound knowledge of things they already knew. Notice the wording that I'm using here. I'm really, really close to just plain old sucking up, but not doing it to the point where they think that I'm subservient to them. Because I still have my own show to run. I still have to do things my way. But as long as I let the person think that they're leading everything, then it plays right into what they would want. But once again, the main thing is getting them in the door, and it just doesn't really happen. I'll tell you when it happens. It happens when it's court mandated or multiple family member mandated or something like that, in which case, going back to just about every other narcissist, you end up with this very fragile balance. And for anyone that's heard previous episodes, I know this is the broken record part, but now I have a bigger problem, not just whether or not I'm able to get through in treatment, but because they built up so many walls and barriers to even discuss these types of things, heaven forbid there's a breakthrough that was not planned for or unexpected, because then there's a certain level of fragility. And if you shatter that glass cannon that's now allowing other types of emotions and thoughts of maybe they're not the best, or maybe they're not exactly what they thought they were in so many different ways, then you can have severe depression, anxiety, anger, all these things come out that they have never experienced in that way before. And you really have to help the person build them back up. So it's great. So now I'm taking something that, this person built them up to be a mountain. I just came and crashed that down. And it's okay, maybe I don't want to reconstruct a mountain. Maybe I do, but I don't want a molehill. So I got to go for decent size. It's just it becomes a balancing act. But once again, only if the person allows for it, which is, once again, uncommon. So it's very frustrating, and you could hear that in my voice. But if a person's willing to do it, they can have just as much success as anyone else, but it takes time. This is also one of those long processes, not happening overnight.
Yeah, this is a decon recon situation. You are deconstructing the person down to some sort of an essence and then having to build them back up, because at their foundation, to go back to your mountain metaphor, the foundation of that mountain is so unstable that you can't rebuild on top of that. You need to break down all the way to the base level and then rebuild on top of that. And that's terraforming essentially. And that is not an easy task. And so we will see what happens when we get Dr. Doom on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Dr. Doom. I'm Dr. Issues.
Good afternoon, fellow doctor. Do you compare your degree with the might of Doom?
What? Of course not.
A wise move. None can match the wisdom and brilliance of Doom. Not even Richards, although he would never admit it.
I think that's record time for someone to bring up a personal nemesis without prompting.
Nemesis? No. Richards is not worthy of such a title, nor the brain power it would require to deem him so. I merely mention him to stave off any such ideas you might have of comparing us. Doom's nemeses are ignorance and myopia.
And you do this by mentioning yourself in the third person, barely registering someone that has
led to some setbacks and registering a speech pattern that I can only describe as 11.
Doom does not suffer setbacks. Doom wins or learns.
That would explain the oodles of wisdom.
What was that?
Nothing. I wanted to learn from your wisdom, then. How have encounters with someone like Richards educated you from an emotional intelligence standpoint?
Doom's emotions play little role in the decisions that need to be made. Latverians require a ruler to focus on their well-being, not immature contests, which Doom would win anyway.
In that case, heavy is the head that wears the crown, or mask. How do you manage the stress of being the sole decision maker for a whole country?
There is no stress. My citizens deserve the best. That is what they shall have. Doom cares not for what other nations provide for their people.
But do you always know what's best? I mean, what if...
Yes.
I didn't even get to my...
Question Doom at your own peril.
Okay. I shall learn from this, as you say. There is no replacement for ignorance of others' emotions, no matter how well-intentioned you are. The citizens of your country will always know that you want what is best for them. When will you know before their revolution that they have changed, as all humans do?
Doom standards evolve with time. Do not confuse disregard for political niceties with lack of concern for the citizenry. Every Latverian is important to Doom. The opinions of the rest of the world are irrelevant, however.
So people aren't important. Got it.
Until humanity recognizes their best hope of survival and advancement is through Doom, the focus shall be on the best life for Latverians. Doom cannot force mankind to see this, only provide a living example for them to strive and ultimately fail to achieve.
Cool. So the rest of humanity survives its own way and sees this nice, shiny, relatively small, fancy object of a country that they can't have and whistles on by? I mean, history's most elaborate footnote from your description. If only everyone else had listened, then the ultimate martyr would have had a brighter day in the sun.
Doom has foreseen all the timelines. The only one in which humanity survives and thrives is that which Doom controls. The world ignores this at its own peril.
The world ignores a lot of things all the time. Each person has their own idea of what's most important to them in each moment. What you're asking for is the world to recognize you as the most important thing at some moment. You know, you tell me. Based on a 1 in a whatever number of scenarios with a population of billions, each with their own free will, most with no knowledge of the things you speak, and the odds of winning a genetic lottery to be born in the country you rule. For someone with the largest aspirations known on the planet, you really sell yourself short in the marketing department.
Doom does not sell anything short. Doom is no mere carnival barker. There is no overstatement or exaggeration involved. Doom merely speaks facts. The world is in grave danger unless fealty is sworn. You speak of Doom's disregard for humanity and free will. It is born of an overwhelming love for humanity above all else that drives Doom. Your continued blindness towards this makes Doom question your credentials. You are even less deserving of your doctorate than Richards.
I'm not stupid enough to say that you're wrong in your convictions. I'm providing the perspective of someone who hears these sorts of comments from multiple people with regards to their importance in the world. I know you're wise enough to look at someone else's perspective, so take mine. If multiple people claim they're number one at the same thing and with the same conviction, then how do I discern what's fact versus narcissistic conjecture? I legitimately want your guidance on this.
Doom is number one because Doom wills it to be so. In addition, Latveria's standard of living is proof of Doom's magnanimous nature. If all mankind enjoyed the same benefits, there is no end to what could be achieved. So it is not mere conjecture or boasting, it is factual. Doom's leadership exceeds all others.
Magnanimous? By that logic, you'd be willing to give me some credit for taking the time as an outsider to try to learn your motivations, your culture, your experience.
So it shall be.
What's this? Why would I get a notification from my bank? I don't even have it linked. What did you do?
You dare question Doom's sincerity and his love of mankind? If you truly are an ambassador to Latveria, Even if Doom does not require such need of a doctor, I do not waste resources on such an encounter.
Are you overpaying to make it seem like this session was more important than it appears, even though you disagree with me?
This is the experience of all who serve the health of Latveria.
So you're saying this is my money at this point to do with as I please?
Do not challenge the benevolence of Doom.
Alrighty. Just let me get this transfer going and there. Okay. I'm glad that you are such a fantastic soul.
Doom is quite aware of your puns. What did you just do?
I just donated some excess money, net of my standard fee, of course, to, a few things. A future foundation, maybe the fantastic.
This insult will not stand.
What insult? You've collaborated before with the Future Foundation to save existence itself, and after all, this is my choice, not yours. I think they may be perplexed by the, for the good of Latveria comment.
If there is a meeting of the minds with Richards because of this, then I will hold you personally responsible.
And I will be obligated, based on your oft-mentioned wisdom, to acknowledge my role, since I really can't lie about it. Would you rather me be an anonymous cog in the wheel or part of your team to make ongoing improvements?
Doom has no need of a team, but a subservient advisor may prove of use from time to time. Consider it done, non-citizen minion of mental health.
Minion? Well, that's better than prisoner or casualty, I guess.
Your gratitude is appreciated. Doom has spoken.
So you work for Doom now?
Think of it as more of a soulful advisor.
Okay, soulful advisor. Recommended reading would be Fantastic Four. The old, like the Stanley, Jack Kirby Fantastic Fours. I would say any one of them really. Matt points out Doom has been remarkably consistently written over the decades because the character is so pure that you know what you're getting with Doom. Even under Byrne and Englehart, when things shifted a little bit and he was focusing more on mysticism and stuff, there was still the base of the character there.
To be honest, and I know
we didn't even get into Doombots or any of that other stuff.
I know. Well, I was going to say, even if for whatever reason, like if you're more into video games right now, if you play Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I feel like that was just a great way, even though he's not heavy in the game itself until the very end. He runs through the entire story, and you just it really does justice to his types of aspirations and how he would go about things and what happens when he's defeated. Like, that's as has already been pointed out. Like, it's actually very simple to write for him, which is why I don't understand why we have such terrible Fantastic Four movies.
Well, we have terrible Fantastic Four movies because Fox had the rights for so long and they were more focused on casting who was popular and in as opposed to who could actually do the job. I don't think Julian McMahon was a terrible actor.
No, he wasn't. No.
I don't think he was terribly cast. I think it was the material he was given was awful. And we were just talking about on the break that the best performance of Dr. Doom in a film is Raul Julia as M. Bison in Street Fighter. That is the quintessential Dr. Doom. He doesn't have a mask, obviously, but egomaniac in charge of a country. Now, the folks who live in Shadaloo are not nearly as well off as Latverians, but pretty much everything else. And Matt also points out the original Secret Wars is great for recommended reading. That's just a great miniseries in general for all of the reasons. You get the Black Suit Spider-Man and a whole host of other things. So yeah, go back and read the original Secret Wars. I did also enjoy the new Secret Wars, not to be confused with Secret Wars 2, which, from the 80s. I mean, like the redo of Secret Wars from like 5 or 6 years, 5 years ago or so, where Doom does, with the incursions between Ultimate and 616 Marvel, and Doom takes over the universe and basically breaks up the Fantastic Four and has them all serve him because he's petty AF. So a great review read that we got. a unique concept with a super delivery, a unique take on your favorite superheroes, diving into a side of them you might not often think of right away. Should they be in therapy? Find out by listening to Capes on the Couch. That's a 5-star review from the Good Game Guys. So we appreciate that support as always. And you can leave us a review on Podchaser or Apple Podcasts or anywhere, any platform that allows you to leave a rating and review. And if you email us at Capes on the Couch with a screenshot of that review and your address, we will send you a sticker as a way to say thank you. So upcoming episodes are Jocasta, sister/wife/daughter of Ultron. I forget. She's connected to Ultron is the takeaway from this. Then Amanda Waller, another Matt episode. So it's not quite back to back, but Dr. Doom just happened to come up in the rotation. But Amanda Waller, we're going to throw in there because of the Suicide Squad movie coming out soon, which I definitely want to see. And then 5 from the Umbrella Academy. And if you're a patron, you know that we reviewed volume 1 of the Umbrella Academy way back, several months ago. So definitely go and check that out. And you can, as always, find all of our episodes on our website, capesonthecouch.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. The aforementioned capesonthecouch@gmail.com if you want to contact us and ask us any questions or, just generally leave us some commentary or your thoughts on our episodes. I also think that if you're listening to this episode or if you're reading Dr. Doom, you should listen to Mad Villainy by MF Doom. Rest in power, Daniel Dumoulin. Hell of a rapper.
Yeah.
So, Doc, anything you want to add before we leave?
When you think of someone like Doom, there's a lot of anxiety, fear, sadness, pain, suffering. But think about it. If you just turn that around, you'll end up in control of your mood.
Boom. For Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.